Hello, my name is Host Eric, and I am the host of Talking with Famous People. And today I'm going to be discussing a personality type that's one of my extroverted intuition buddies, namely the INFP personality type. And I've written a little paper here about it, and I'm going to read it to you and discuss it. I've titled it Nurture's Ward, A Fragile Strength, INFP. Isn't that a nice title? My host Eric. I'm Talking with Famous People. I like doing shit like this on title pages. Alright, so you'll see why I call them what I call them here in a second. Let's look at the quick reference table. First of all, the INFP, or INFJ in socionics, is also known as the EII. That's the Ethical Intuitive Introvert. They have a conscious stack in MBTI of FINESITE, and the shadow functions in MBTI are FENISETE. And note here I've put down as well the MBTI role function of SI. It's not quite so relevant as it might be in another type, but I put it there anyway. Let's look now at the blocks in socionics. Remember, socionics understands personality as being divided into 4 blocks: the ego block, super id block, and id block. The ego block are your dominant and second functions. This is going to be the same in socionics or MBTI. The leading function for the INFP is FI. That's socionics slot number 1, MBTI 1. Creative function, extroverted intuition, NE, socionics 2. That's MBTI 2 as well. And much as MBTI calls your second function a tool function, socionics treats it much the same way, calling it the creative function, that with which you act in the world, basically. Or the main tool with which you use to process the information that comes through the frame of your dominant function. Let's put it that way. Okay, so in the superego block, you've got your role function in socionics and your polar function. That's your place of least resistance. So socionics sees the INFP role function as TI. This is fairly significant. I think it's a better understanding of the role function of the INFP than MBTI provides in this case, not necessarily always. The polar function, being the place of least resistance, this is the same as for the INTP, and it's going to produce many of the same outcomes, the same kind of difficulties. Stop that, please, Kitty. Kitty's playing with the chords. So I've explained to her, no, those are not for you, baby. Those are not for you. Okay, so anyway, this is the action function, the control function, the be the boss function, and a lot of other things come into play with SE. It's not always that, but it's got elements of that. So it's significant then that we make note of the fact that SC, the go, proceed function, is weak, the weakest spot for the INFP. All right, so for the socionic super id block, this talks about the suggestive function and mobilizing function. These are going to be 5, 6 in socionics, but they're not going to be 5, 6 in MBTI. They'll be 3 and 4. So introverted sensing, the suggestive function is in that slot, and then TE, what we consider in MBTI to be the weak spot, really, the conscious weak spot, is TE. Socionics calls out the mobilizing function, and they also agree that it's a weak spot. So TE is weak. In exchange, you get really strong but unconscious TI. So it's an interesting combination there. Now look at the ignoring functions and demonstrative functions. These are socionics 7 and 8, but they're going to be MBTI 5, 6. That's FE and NI. So FE is the one that's going to be ignored primarily because it focuses on introverted feeling. NI is going to be something that INFP is very good at and naturally utilizes, but undervalues consciously. Hey, Kitty, you need to stop. Okay, these are not toys for you, okay? No, not toys. Kitty, stop. Stop. This is not for you to play with. Stop. You need to stop it. Anyway, she's a great cat, but she's full of beans and rice sometimes. So let's go down to the. Let's talk about the nicknames. I always like nicknames. I've added some of my own nicknames here. The Mystic, the Mediator, the Pacifist, the Poet. These are nicknames I found online. The other ones are ones I made up. Mush Lover, Everybody Be Nice, They Have Lives Too, Don't Shame the Despot. Doesn't matter how awful something someone did is, they don't want to hear you talk bad about that person. Kitty, I'm going to put you out of this garage. Fucking goddamn Kitty. I wish I had a pause on this thing. Okay. Little Miss Butthurt. Yeah, sorry, that's not a very nice nickname, but that's basically INFP in a nutshell. Kind of the feeling police, let's bond deeper, and tender moments. Those are all good nicknames for INFP. If you'll excuse me for a second. Kitty Meow Meow needs to go outside. Yes, she does. Yes. Say hi, Kitty. You're a bad kitty. I gave her plenty of warnings. Plenty of warnings, I say. So, those are your nicknames that I made up for you guys. Let's look at the Enneagram tri-types. INFP's tri-type likely includes a 2 or a 4, a 6 or a 7, and a 9. Remember, you take 2, 3, 4, an 8, 9, 1, and a 5, 6, 7. So those are your possibilities. I put down here what I think generally sort of correlates with the types, which functions do. You'll note type 1, SI and FE, type 2, FI and FE, type 3, FE and SE, type 4, NI and FI, type 5, TI and NE, type 6, SI and FI, type 7, NE and SE, type 8, SE and TE, type 9, NI and FI. All right, so if you look at the ones that have FI on them, those are the ones I think are going to most likely be representative of the INFP, and that's type 4 or type 2, because it's got to be a 2, 3, or 4. So I would guess probably 4 is a little bit more likely. So then you look then at the 6, 7, 8 section. Well, it's not going to be 8. It could be 6 in the more damaged ones, and it could be 7 in the less damaged ones. That NE is going to promote adventurousness for sure. The FI is going to promote some anxiety. All right, and then the last one, the 891, for 5, 6, 7, you could have a 5 type INFP. Remember, they have TI in MBTI 8th slot, which is something that you're going to be very effective at. Just like I am an ENTP and I have SE in the last slot, the 8th slot at MBTI numbering. It's not conscious, but I do all kinds of stuff all the time, right? I'm very much a doer. Maybe not a very planned doer, maybe not a very attentive to what I'm doing or why I'm doing it doer, but a doer nevertheless. So I guess my point here is you are a thinker in the same fashion, and it's unavoidable that your TI is pretty damn strong. So be aware of that, and don't be afraid to value it as consciously as you can, given the fact that it's where it is in your stack. Okay, so anyway, I have you guys down as the most likely type is 479, followed by probably 469. I didn't put that down there, but 469, the Seeker if you're more damaged, 479 if you're less damaged, the Gentle Spirit. Other possibilities: Good Samaritan, Peacemaker, Contemplative if you value more than most INFPs value your TI, then you might be a contemplative or a problem solver. So those are possibilities that I think for tri-types. I could be wrong. Again, this is just a hypothesis of mine. I have no data to support it. But check out tri-typing. I think it's interesting. I think it provides some useful bits of poop gathering. All right, now the part to read. Introduction. Think of life as an MMORPG. The types are the classes of characters you might choose to play. If you are not familiar with the game, you might want to start off playing as an ENTJ or an INFJ. Those types have some significant strengths, and it's easy to see how those strengths can be used to achieve good outcomes. Now, if you are a truly expert player and you really want a challenge, you might want to consider playing as an INFP. It's the most challenging class of character to use successfully, but if you can master their moves and work around the shortcomings, they have abilities no other class has. Most people, even so, won't choose to play this kind of character because the impacts attained through the application of those abilities are subtle ones, not always understood immediately in either scope or time frame. Not easily understood immediately in either scope or time frame is what that should say. So let's look at childhood now. Childhood support is critical for the INFP. These are the kids with whom ENTP kids get impatient. You get your feelings hurt too easily. You tell on people. You hold grudges. You don't know how to play right. We want things fair, but you want everyone to feel good, and there's nothing fair about that. This is not only the reaction of the ENTP, but the reaction of many other types as well. It's the ontological violence that we rationals perpetrate upon the INFP because we do not understand them at all. The conflict of values between the rationals and the INFP is the foundation of existence for INFP. She doesn't live in a moment of human history in which her unique abilities are valued much. She represents the exposed heart of human experience, and the childhood is a rough and tumble time for us all. Young INFP needs just the right parent. More than any other type, INFP needs to be nurtured and guided into an adulthood in which he can safely manifest his true nature. Theirs is a fragile and subtle power, the ability to without contentiousness. Theirs is a fragile and subtle power, the ability to, without contentiousness. God damn it, Eric. Theirs is a fragile and subtle power, the ability to, without contentiousness, challenge others upon their moral failings and to provoke change in others regarding their own degree of mindfulness of the unique and distinct humanity of the other. It's a weird power. It is a weird power. It's fair to call it that. But that doesn't make it not powerful and not important. So let's look at less damaged adult INFP. Most fragile of the types, few INFPs emerge into adulthood without having sustained significant damage. What they seek is to be wholly loved and valued unconditionally by significant others who seek the same in return from them. If they get plenty of this in childhood, then they become enabled to effortlessly manifest their idealism in adulthood. A realized adult INFP has learned to make good decisions and has chosen to function in the capacity that fulfills them both at home and in their work. Chances are, if they are living their optimal life, that work is artistic. However, INFP is so concerned about everybody feeling good that they will generally excel in any subordinate work capacity, especially if it involves interacting with clients or customers. Well-loved INFPs can attain amazing results in performance in teaching and or coaching. I hired and lived with an INFP speech coach named Ralph. He's an actor who has been in big-name movies, including Fletch, Rain Man, and Let It Ride. But now he works as a speech coach and drama teacher. At the time, he worked as my speech coach, and he helped me launch a program in China. He's the best speech coach I've ever seen, and I've seen a lot of good ones. More on his techniques in the How a Well-Functioning INFP Operates section. More damaged adult INFP. The INFP who is shown inadequate love as a child, or who is subject to too much abuse by peers or staff in the school system, is subject to manifest problems as an adult. Addiction. Foremost, INFP, like all four of the extroverted intuitives, is prone to alcohol and drug abuse. There's a freedom to be had through alcohol. INFP, like ENTP, lives in a world of hazily manifest sort of real notions. Like all Ns, he is prone to get stuck in his head and weight abstractions more heavily than the opportunities presented by a beautiful spring day, for example. Like all Ns, INFP may have difficulty feeling and experience in the moment, even though she leads with FI. The feeling is there, no doubt, but what is it actually about? Something that's happening in front of us? Probably not just that, at least. Implicit in this kind of life is the haunting idea that we're missing out on what is really important. ISFP doesn't have this worry. Neither does INFP when she is drunk. Most damaged adult INFP, borderline personality disorder. For the most damaged INFPs, those subject to neglect or abuse as a child, BPD is a very real possibility. This disorder is best described as, I hate you, don't leave me. The core issue for every INFP is security. He needs the world to offer him safe passage more than anything else. He needs to be protected from the awfulness of bad human behavior. When afforded inadequate security as a child, INFP can enter a cycle that typifies BPD. Quote, you are my significant other. You're supposed to love me. You say you do, but if you did, then I wouldn't have been neglected as a child. I know this is insane, but I blame you for it anyways, and demand to be loved as a child should be loved, even though I'm an adult. You can't go back and change what happened to me, and I can't experience the parental love for the child I once was now, no matter what you do, but I demand it of you anyway. That sums up borderline personality disorder. INFP is most likely, if you have somebody who's got borderline personality disorder or something equivalent, it's most likely an INFP. How a well-functioning INFP operates. Remember, though, these things are determined early. This is why I call them nurture's ward. It's not up to them how damaged they are. Their nature is fragile. They have to be raised properly. How a well-functioning INFP operates. This issue of hierarchy deserves a closer look. INFP is incapable of, quote, being the boss. This does not mean that they won't ever be the boss. INFP may well own a business, for example, but the actual bossing people around will have to be done by someone else. This is so because only INFP expects a perfect world. Someone has to, or we wouldn't have any way of knowing what perfection would look like. It's a world in which INFP feels completely secure. In such a world, everyone is having their needs met, and no one is subject to violence. How then does an INFP manage a group? Guilt, pretty much. Ralph cared so much about what he was doing and about the success of the kids that it was just impossible for the kids to not go along with it. They could see that this man had no defenses except his powerful feelings that it was unfair for them not to go along with what he was doing, and the intensity with which he cared for and about the kids. They had no choice but to buy in or feel like awful people. That's the INFP's power in a nutshell. Function analysis, socionics. FI plus NE, polar SE, weak TE, and strong but unvalued TI. Those are the most important cognitive function interactions to consider with the EII. FI plus NE manifests as FE without the shallowness in perception management. It's true. Because they're making possibilities in the external world about their own feelings. It necessitates that they assume the equivalency of the feelings of others, foremost as a starting position. Okay. NE as the creative function means that INFP begins with his own feelings, extrapolates them into the external world. He knows instinctively the equivalency of the other's legitimacy. They have lives too, he might shout. IEE also finds it irrelevant to make TI distinctions about such matters. That some individual has behaved badly and that justice demands a punishment doesn't matter. The act is over, and the new action being proposed, punishment, will only serve to cause more harm. What's most fair is what's least hurtful. So this is how come INFPs are not known to have strong TI, even though they do, is because it's not relevant to them. They can parse it out beautifully, but that's not something they consciously value. And unlike SE, it doesn't lend itself to manifesting naturally in ways that are supportive of their other things. So with TE as the mobilizing function, MBTI 4th, Socionic 6th, the EII will take as much protocol help as she can get. She prefers unstructured work with no determinate goal at all, but given that she must engage in employment or otherwise utilize the systems of the world to generate wealth, she's happy to have someone else deal with the protocols. Or just tell her what to do. In exchange, INFP gets the shadow TI as the Socionics role function, which is why INFPs are devilishly smart and competitive. I can't beat Liz at untimed chess, and only if I'm lucky at timed chess. Nobody can beat her at Connect 4 ever. She writes well and goes toe-to-toe with me in raw smarts. This only really shows itself through competition, though. It shows itself, though, in competition. It doesn't matter what the game is, she wants to win and has the ability to do so. As long as it's unfair, as long as it's fun for everybody, then TI can come out and stretch its legs. She doesn't really care about TI at all, though. When it comes down to it, she never applies that mechanism towards real problems outside of her employment, because doing so always interferes with the core vision of the ideal world in which nobody's feelings get hurt and nobody's ever subject to punishment or violence. You can see the difficulty that's necessarily in place when you're talking about INFPs, because they're in a world that's not really suited for their way of understanding things particularly well. They need to structure their immediate environment to attend to that. SE, as the place of least resistance, handicaps INFP as much as it does INTP. When one uses possibility as a tool function instead of a frame of reference, one necessarily is going to have trouble with the acting and proceeding down a path part of things. Thus, INFP can begin to hole up. He feels the pressure of the world's expectations acutely. He knows he cannot meet them all, and he cannot decide which of them to prioritize because he can see how the feelings underlying each of the various perspectives are equally valid. Note that he can also see which are logically superior arguments, but considers such a metric to be the wrong way to adjudicate the issue. Finally, let's look for a moment at SI as the suggestive function. This will be the fifth slot for socionics and the third slot for MBTI. INFP wants to construct an identity and to know who they are as an individual being. They want these things to stay put, to be reliable and understood, but they tend to manifest this mostly in terms of worrying about finances and making sure basic security things are handled. As for the INTP, SI for the INFP is not a function that requires a lot of action. Instead, it requires consistency regarding a certain limited number of actions. Thus, INFP is much better ultimately at keeping their own lives together than is the ENTP or ENFP. Actualization and the INFP. INFP, you were born actualized. You just have to shed all the bullshit the world has heaped upon you. I was born half actualized. I've got to get rid of the dumb shit from outside and inside. You just need to get rid of the dumb shit from outside, because ultimately you are the most right about the largest vision. Everybody should have their needs met, and nobody should be subject to violence. The tough part then is this: how can you, INFP, manifest the self you optimally are? Your optimal self is joyous, playful, inventive, free, loving, mindful of others, helpful, and cleverly fun. This self does not line up well with the world you see, in which people are hurting and angry, or they do bad things to one another. I recommend making the life around you as much like that as possible, and to try to avert your eyes from the rest. Your actualization will be cozy. Cozy. It's not going to include much of the outside world. It's going to include your family, a very supportive family, a life designed to meet your needs and to enable you to do the amazing things you can do when you are so empowered. Thank you for watching Talking with Famous People, and have a good day. INFP, you're my supervisor. If I hurt your feelings at any point in this episode, you're supposed to let me know that without making me feel bad somehow. Don't worry, you're not going to make me feel bad. You can let me know if I was too harsh or something like that, all right? Thanks for watching, and don't forget to eat plenty of cheese. It's the only thing that will make you happy. That's how you actualize. Eat plenty of cheese.